He is Lord, Lord of all.
Welcome back to On Point from the Summerdale Church of Christ. We're reading through 1 Timothy now. We come to chapters 4 through 6. Not long ago, we were going through those little books, little epistles of Paul, and I know we talked about how we needed to read them in their context and read the whole book at one setting, and maybe you already did that. Maybe you looked at 1 Timothy and said, I'm just going to breeze on through these last 3 chapters. I mentioned yesterday, I love the books to Timothy and Titus. I think we should read them. Ministers should read them all the time. I was told as a young preacher at least once a week, and that I don't always keep to that, but man, that is a good way to look at ministry and gaining wisdom from someone who knows a whole lot more about it than I do, which is the Apostle Paul. In 1 Timothy chapter 4 through 6, Paul, it talks a little bit about the ministry of Timothy in the 4th chapter. He talks about how he needs to take heed to certain things. He needs to avoid certain things. He even gives a list of doctrines that he was fearful the church would end up practicing. And fast forward 500-600 years, they did every single one of the things on that list. But in chapter 5, Paul talks about the elderly members of the church. He specifically addresses the ministry to the widows. And for whatever reason, in Ephesus, they had some widows on the roll, and we might say on the payroll. They were given an opportunity to serve the church in various capacities, whether it's in, he deals with these, some washing of feet or preparing meals, or maybe we'd say making communion for worship. But these ladies had a role, a vital role in the church, and he says they should be on the payroll of the church. They should be cared for financially if they're serving like that. And then he also talks about elders and elderly men and the role that they fill. And I don't want to get into too much controversy here, and I've talked before about those subjects about elders and about elderly members being supported financially by the church. But I want to remind you of James 1:27, where Paul is teaching about this doctrine in the church at Ephesus. It seems that James and Peter and other writers knew the same thing. They'd experienced the same things. And so James says in James 1 and verse 27 that pure and undefiled religion before God the Father is to visit the orphans and widows in their affliction and keep yourself unspotted from the world. So the ministry to the widows and to the orphans was taking a precedent. In fact, in Acts, we see that as early as Acts chapter 6, when they're taking their collection and they're distributing to the poor, and they feel like there's a group of individuals that feel like there's a group of widows that are being overlooked. So the church reaches out to them. So here's my thought. As Paul writes these things in chapter 5, be thinking about the way that we treat our widows and widowers, the church. How do we care for those who are elderly? I'm not just talking about our shepherds, our elders that serve in that capacity. I'm talking about our older members. What can we do to bless them, to help them? We're now in the middle of the holidays, and there's a lot of our older members that family lives too far away, and they don't get a lot of attention. Maybe it's time we upped our game when it came to card writing and calls and visits for people that are elderly. And the reason why Paul emphasizes this as a ministry of the church is because no matter how old we are, we always have something to offer. Even if someone cannot physically get out and do the things they used to do, if they have a strong mind, they sure can share some insight and wisdom. So the blessing that you are given to be able to share and to look after those who are widows or widowers, it's also a blessing to them to be able to share what they have with you as well. Hope you have a great day today. Thanks for tuning in to On Point.
The storm,